All right, the time has come. So many people have been asking us what happened with the Dents Run story. And this is it. This is our story about what happened with Dents Run. We're going to start at the very beginning. We're going to go in chronological order. It's going to take multiple videos. We're not going to cover everything in this episode. We're going to be 100% true, honest. We're going to leave some names out for privacy purposes. But everything we're going to tell you is true. It's 100% truth. If you choose to believe us, if you choose not to believe us, that's your choice. But this is our story. So, for those that don't know the Lost Civil War gold story, what was it? How did it come to be?
Well, during the Civil War, they were transporting, before the Civil War, they transported most of the gold from California by ships around the Floridan area. And they lost a very valuable shipment, I think around the 1858 period. And there was a lot of gold on that ship, and it almost bankrupted our country. So when President Lincoln started shipping the gold by rail, by then they had railroads, and he thought that was the safer way of doing it. So this gold shipment came through during the time of the Battle of Gettysburg. About a month it was on already being transported from California, a month before the war, and it came by train to William, West Virginia, and was headed for the Philadelphia Mint. The only problem is the Battle of Gettysburg was starting to brew up, and to take it that straight shot right from Virginia to Philadelphia would be too dangerous. So they decided to go by wagon,
Mm-hmm.
put the gold in false bottoms of two wagons. If you read the original story, it says freight wagons, not wagon, but wagons. So 26 bars in each wagon. And they took off from Virginia with a guy named Connors, and they were heading north, going through Pennsylvania, and that's where Connors lived in central PA. And he was out of the army at this time. He was injured.
So their goal was to make an arch through Pennsylvania big enough to avoid the Battle of Gettysburg.
Yes, and then they got up in the Ridgeway area, St. Mary's area, and the lieutenant got sick. Castleton got sick from malaria, and he turned the whole operation over to Connors. What he didn't know was Connors couldn't read. Connors couldn't write. He came in as a young kid from Ireland. Um, I know the entire history of Connors. I know everything about him, but
Okay.
we did not give that information up. The uh, At this time, Connors was injured, out of the service, and he was hired as a guide to take the wagon train from St. Mary's down to Lock Haven into Philadelphia. Connors left St. Mary's at nighttime against the orders of Lieutenant Castleton, and he took the wrong road. The problem is Connors couldn't even read a map, and he took the wrong road. They ended up on the top of Dents Run, a dead end. They couldn't get off, so they stayed there for a couple of weeks. The story can change at that point. You know.
So the known story back in the 70s at that time was that Connors, a few days later or weeks later, arrived into Lock Haven
Yeah,
by himself.
a couple of weeks later, he showed up by himself, and he said that they were robbed by the Copperheads, which is a southern group from the south that came up to steal as much gold and chaos.
Southern sympathizers.
Yeah.
Okay.
He blamed it on them. Now that's where the story goes.
So what happened with Connors then at that point? Did they believe him? Did the army?
Connors stand trial in up north at northern Pennsylvania, Scranton. He did trial. Well, the trial was held here in Lock Haven, but he was transferred up to Scranton and held up there for a while until the investigation was done. When the war ended in about 1816, he was or 1868, he was transferred, reenlisted, booked back in, and transferred out west to Arizona, and he was there where they were fighting the Indians at the time. Connors, when he got drunk, he couldn't even show anybody on the map where Dents Run was, but he used to talk about this lost gold story all the time to all the other soldiers.
And he would brag about knowing where it was buried.
Yes. But he couldn't find his way back, and they didn't believe him. But they didn't know he couldn't read or write at the time either. The interesting thing is he died at the fort in 1884. When the fort was shut down in Yuma, Arizona, they transferred all the bodies that were there to the Golden Gate Bridge. And he's on the far side buried in a fort that was there. All the bodies were transferred. So Connors ended up, and he's under the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah. Anyway, the main thing is there was 160 some people living in Dents Run back then. And according to Connors, he said there was a shootout with the Copperheads. But if there was a shootout, you're looking at this 13 soldiers with automatic weapons, and you're looking at probably 30 Copperheads coming after them. You would have had a heck of a shootout.
And I know people were going to ask, they had automatic weapons back in the Civil War?
You had the Spencers and the Henrys, but if you send some people out on a gold shipment, you're going to have them with the repeaters.
But were they automatic weapons, or were they loaded cartridges? They weren't muzzle loaders.
No, they weren't muzzle loaders. No, they were quick action.
Lever action. So they weren't
yeah.
semi-automatics like a pistol.
I'm sorry,
okay.
yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. But you wouldn't send a troop out with the muzzle loaders carrying that much gold. So obviously they had the better stuff. And O'Rourke, he was on this mission. He was ordered by the order of President Lincoln to be on this shipment. All these guys were picked by Lincoln. So, and we have the paperwork to prove it. So I'm obviously sure they had the good guns.
So the story back then states that after Connors was sent out west and everything, the Pinkerton went in to find this gold, and all they found was these dead bodies.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And they found the dead bodies at the bottom of this mountain near the river.
At the head of Bell Branch, which is a little bit up from the cave site.
And nobody knew why. And at the time, I mean, we have our theories down the road, but at the time, it was not, the gold was never found. Just the bodies, the wagons, the horses, and the mules or whatever, none of them were found. They all ran off. So that was released in a magazine.
Yes, it was actually released in this magazine here in 1974. Up until 1974, gold was not legally to be owned by the people in the United States because of what went on in Germany, Nazi Germany. So there's a period of time you could not own gold. So they didn't publish anything about this. But when the law passed in 1974 that you could own gold, then the treasure hunting magazines put this story out.
And that's how you found out about it.
Yeah, because as I said, I was working in W.T. Grants, and me and my friends were out going on the weekends looking for stuff, and we bought this magazine, and we were just reading it. I didn't go up.
So you said you and your friends were working at W.T. Grants. You guys bought this book, this magazine. You bought an atlas. You were reading up on it. People were saying back then, did people say that the story, the myth, the legend never happened? That there was no documentation?
Yes.
So they said that clear back then, that this was just a myth. It never happened.
Right.
It was just a fairy tale.
Back then, you didn't have the internet, and you didn't have all the stuff you have nowadays, so there was limited sources to check out back then. And my friends went ahead to the basic places, government, museums, historical societies, and there was nothing. A lot of this stuff was fires were set and stuff, mishaps, to where a lot of this evidence disappeared. So nobody could find out if this story was true or not.
Okay.
For many, many years, yeah.
Okay. So it's put in a magazine back in the 70s. You're with some friends. You're trying to, hey, let's find this treasure. Let's make some quick money here. And what was it like back then? I mean, you guys didn't have the treasure hunting equipment back then. You just had basic handheld metal detectors. How did you guys think that you were ever going to find this treasure? Hopes and dreams?
At that point, that's all it was.
Just hopes and
Yeah,
dreams
hopes
back
and
then.
dreams, yeah. There was nothing else. We would have fallen in the same category as any other treasure hunting company with the same type of equipment, just something to do on the weekends. That was about it.
Just a hobby
Yeah.
back then.
Mhm.
I mean, as a kid growing up, I've heard this story for years, many times, and I remember you saying that one of your buddies, was so dead set that you were finding the treasure, he went out and bought a brand new Jeep.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he figured out how much it would take to get the 2.5 tons out of there, and we couldn't carry it, so he's got a high-powered Jeep. He actually bought it. Yes, he did.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around this one back in the 1970s. It just seems like another California gold rush, you know? Like everybody would be looking for this treasure back then. Other
Yeah.
competition?
There was a lot of people looking for it. Jack Shaw was looking for it for 20 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into a lady from the Historical Society. She spent her younger years up there looking for it, and people living at the camps down at the bottom of this mountain, their grandparents and their dads all look for it. I mean, there's a lot of people going after this. But you know, you just can't walk through the woods. It's the research involved that would cut the chase in half, really. And we had inside help that basically got us to where we got to. Yeah,
And that's what I'm getting to.
we figured out.
That's what I'm getting to because everybody wants to know, how did finders keepers get the edge to finding this site? I know there's people that say, oh, it's buried over here and it's not in Dents Run, it's buried over there. But we stuck with Dents Run. And something back in 1974 just gave you that edge. And I know you don't like talking about it because you think people are gonna roll it out and say, "Oh, that's not true. That's not accurate. That can't happen." But what we're about to tell you, as stated, it's 100% true.
It's the truth.
It's 100% honest, and everything that happened from 1974 till 2018 was enough evidence and enough put together
to change my life forever.
To change our lives
Yeah.
forever,
Mm-hmm.
and it was enough to bring the FBI in.
Yes.
So, in 1974,
Bye.
you and your friends that were doing this were working at W.T. Grant's in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, right?
Yes.
What was W.T. Grant's again, for those who don't know?
It was more like a Walmart nowadays. It was a big shopping plaza in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania. And I was in the furniture section selling furniture and carpeting and appliances.
So back then, 1974, they didn't have the internet to do advertisements. They didn't have all the fancy pop-up ads and everything. They just had the basic newspaper and media and publicity. Spokespersons.
Yeah, we had 3 TV stations in our town. That was it. 3
Still-
by antenna.
Still doing carrier pigeon back then, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, on this day, back in 1974, I believe it was in April, or maybe
Before
it was
April.
before April, so March. So in March, you and your friends are working at this W.T. Grant. You've got your brand new magazine here. You're reading up on this story. You got a brand new Pennsylvania Atlas. You guys are on your break. And somebody special came to W.T. Grant's that day for a promotion gig to bring in customers. We're not going to touch basis on the person's name at their respected wishes. But who was this person? What did he do?
He was a world's famous psychic in the United States. He was on the Johnny Carson show earlier in the year. He did levitating. He did psychic readings. He was pretty famous.
And from this point on, throughout this episodes, we're going to refer to this gentleman as the psychic and nothing more, at his wishes. So, did you believe in psychics back then?
No way. No.
No, you're a see it to believe it kind of person.
Yes.
So you're in the break room, and this psychic's out in the front room bringing in customers. And how did you guys meet?
We were told to stay in our areas, sell furniture, because the psychic was going to do a promotion and bring people in there. So we had to stand back at a distance and watch him. And I seen him up on a higher platform and people gathering all around him, and he was doing things. And I figured, oh, what a bunch of bullshit. I really did. I mean, this is getting ridiculous because he was drawing a lot of people in. I had my atlas and my treasure hunting book that I just bought on the table where we wrote up our cells at. And when the guy got done doing his break, he come walking our direction because he had about a half-hour break. And he comes over and he talks to us, and the guys were asking him questions. There's about 8 of us right at this point, salesmen. And he sits down, and we're just talking, asking questions away. And one of the guys, it wasn't me, his name was Joe, he says,
Joe, if you're out there and you see this, get in touch with us. We'd like to hear your side of the story.
Joe says to him, he says, well, he grabbed the book, the psychic did. He grabbed this treasure hunting book, and he was just paging through it. And my friend says, have you ever done anything to do with treasure hunts? He goes, no. He said, I mostly do find people, locate dead bodies, things like that, tell the people of the past, whatever. And he says, you want to try? He said, we found this gold in Pennsylvania gold. It was a new release. And what I'm about to tell you is absolutely incredible. I'm standing behind the psychic, standing up. He's sitting down. The table's in front of him. Everybody else is in front of him, watching him. I'm the only idiot that's behind him. Because I didn't believe in this guy.
If the shoe fits, right?
Yeah, and he goes to the paragraph where it says right there it was. And it's talking about the gold, and he takes off and he starts speed reading. I knew what speed reading was, and he was going like this back and forth. And I'm thinking, what a bunch of bullshit, what a bunch of bullshit, you know. And he flipped the pages, and he's going back and forth. I'm still standing behind him. He throws the book down, and then he goes into a trance. Now, I don't know what his face was, but it was enough to make those guys stand up. I don't know, it said his eyes rolled back in his head or something, but, you know, to me, that's fakeable.
Oh, yeah.
And then all at once, I'm hearing these voices come out, 2 or 3 different voices, and he's talking away, out of him. And I didn't know what was really going on. I'm just listening. And here he was talking, the voices were the dead soldiers. They were starving, they were hungry. And I wish to this day I could remember everything he said, but I don't. Because I wasn't interested. He's a fake at this point, you know. So I'm listening to this guy talk away. And he's probably about 15 minutes in this trance. And these guys are all paralyzed. They're staring at him.
15 minutes, that's pretty long.
It was. He was. 3 voices were coming out of him. So when he comes out of this trance, he picks up my brand new atlas. And I'm a very possessive person. I just paid like a fortune for this one of these atlases.
This wasn't the atlas back then.
No, it wasn't it. And he says, give me that atlas. And I'm like, okay. And he says, give me an ink pen. Well, if he's going to write or something, so I walk around the front of him, and he opens the atlas up to Pennsylvania. And I'm watching him at this point. He grabs an ink pen I gave him, and he holds it like this. Not normal, like any people would like that. No, he holds it like this. And I'm memorizing all this. This is 100%
Now he's got
correct.
your attention. He's got your atlas. He's got your attention.
Yes. He goes, and I watched him. His eyes went up, and he's looking at the ceiling. And he comes down with his hand like this, and he stares right at me. And he goes, Denny, I don't know how he knew my name. I want you to go to this spot. And everybody gathered in. He was at Dents Run.
Really?
And I'm like, okay. I don't know how he did that. I says, that was good. And he hit the road, going up this dirt trail from the main road. And he hit this road. And he says, I want you to go to this spot. And he says, I want you to take dirt samples. I go, okay. He says, put them in like those blue bonnet butter dishes. They're blue with a white top. I want you to number them 1 to 5. I want 5 samples from that area. You get them from a distance. I want you to use a wooden spoon. I still have the spoon. And no metal involved. You can't touch the dirt. Make sure it's virgin soil is what he calls it. He says, you put that dirt in the container, seal it up, number it, get me 5 of those, and then look me up. He says, I'll see if I can locate the gold. So I had a Corvette back in a 1969 Corvette. Me and this
Pearl white.
white,
White
and
full luggage rack.
me and this big boy from he's one of the salesmen. We jumped in my Corvette. We got these 5 containers. We drove up to Dents Run. We go to the spot that he marked right on the map, and we got out and we dug a sample. We called it number 5 because I don't want to do everything in order. I want to confuse this guy.
Still trying to trick him, huh?
Yeah.
Not a believer.
So number 5. Well, when you see the side of that mountain, how steep it is, there's no way you can bring that gold off that mountain with 2.5 tons. There's just no way on horseback. It can't happen. We figured the best thing is if you stand at the top of the mountain, those 14 horses had to be watered every day.
Now, this was back in 1970s.
Yes.
You were thinking about this when you and your friends, co-workers at the time, were looking into this.
Yeah. And we figured the one guy knew a lot about horses. He says they had to be watered, and there's no water on the top of that mountain, Dents Run. But there is a valley coming down through that takes you down to the creek, which is Bell Branch. And we figured, okay, they had to bring the horses down this ravine to water them. Then I climbed up the damn hill, which I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I was only 22 at the time, but the big boy with me, he made it. We climbed that damn hill, and I seen some weird stuff on the way up where mountain lions could have lived, tunnels and stuff. We got up to the top, and we took a dirt sample up there. Then we came down the hill, got in the Corvette, and these coal trucks, or big trucks were coming down with clay from a mine up above.
So they were mining at the time in this area.
Yeah. It was Hamilton Construction out of Phillipsburg. It had a clay mine up there. My Corvette was pulled off the road enough that these big trucks could come up and down, so that was good. So I'm going through all this mud in this Corvette of mine. We get to the top. We see the mining operation. We get out. We take another virgin sample and number it, and drove around to Hicks Run and took some more samples. We had 5 samples in all of them marked on the map.
Where you got them from.
Yeah.
So you don't believe in psychics, but you're in a pearl white 1969 Corvette driving it through the mud. So you either were a believer or you wanted to prove this guy wrong in the worst way.
I wanted to, when he hit that dot in the map, that got my interest right there. When they were telling me about the voices coming out of his mouth, I wasn't too much of a believer, but the big boy was with me back then. He was sold on this thing. He's the one who bought the Jeep. So we go back to my house, and just to mess things up, I went in my dad's yard, and I got 3 more of those containers filled up, and that was number 6, 7, and 8. So I called the psychic.
And you just put them on the map randomly anywhere?
No, I didn't put them anywhere in the map. No, I didn't mark those 3 there. But I called the psychic up and see he was in St. Mary's, W.T. Grant's. I thought he would be traveling, disappearing, whatever, but no, he was up there. He says, bring him up and I'll check him over.
So they didn't have cell phones back then.
No.
I mean, he must give you his home phone number or something. You called him and...
So we drove up to, I can't think of his name right now, but the big boy, we got in the car with these 8 dirt samples, and we drove up to St. Mary's. And I had the car door open, the passenger door open, and on the floorboards of the passenger side was all 8 of the dirt samples. I'm standing, they're coming towards me, and he cuts in between, the psychic comes in between the open door. I'm standing on the other side, and he sits down in my Corvette. His feet are on the ground, and he reaches over with his right hand and grabs...
With his right hand?
Yeah, with his right hand, and grabs my left hand.
Okay.
Because he's right.
Yeah. So if I'm the psychic, he goes like this.
Yeah. Yeah. He grabbed it just like that. Yeah. He took his left hand with his feet on the ground, and he waved it over top of the dirt samples that were on the floorboard and the passenger side, and immediately he grabbed number 6, 7, and 8, and he put them on the ground. And he looked at me and he goes, "These have nothing to do with this treasure hunt."
Ooh.
And that got my attention. Then he went back in and he put his hand across the other 5, and he grabbed number 5 and pulled it out. And he says, "Give me paper and pencil. I want to draw something for you." So I had the stuff, and I pulled it out. And he drew a map real fast.
He didn't see the atlas, so he doesn't know where number 5 came from.
No, he didn't know. None of that stuff. That's why it didn't matter if I put those last 3 on or not.
Okay.
But then he drew a big V shape on a big blank sheet of paper, and at the top of the left of the V, he drew a circle like a formation, and then over here he drew where there's supposed to be a cave. He says, "Now, Denny, where you got this number 5 dirt sample, I want you to go back to that spot." And he says, "If you look off to the left, you'll see the mountain." And he says, "There's a hole in the mountain." And I go, "What do you mean a hole?" He goes, "I don't know. I'm just telling you. You're going to see a hole in the mountain. And from there, so many degrees, I think it was 23 degrees over from there, there's a cave opening." He says, "The gold is in a cave. It's underwater. And there's snakes inside."
Baby snakes.
Baby snakes.
Baby snakes.
No, he said there were snakes inside.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just baby snakes.
No. And he says, "You find that cave, you call me up." And he goes, "I'll fly in if I have to, and we'll get this gold dug up." Okay, so he goes back into the W.T. Grants.
You shaking? I got me shaking. I know this story. I've heard this story all my life. It was like a bedtime story, and I'm getting now.
It was good. Well, I was shook up then too. When I got in the car with my friend, he was going half nuts because he's been watching everything. Compared to the guys that we left behind, he got to see what happened, how fast that happened. It's interesting that somebody can do something like that. I mean, so quick. There was no hesitation, which it got me going. Okay.
So, for a quick recap, at W.T. Grant's, with looking up at the ceiling, he hit Dents Run in the middle. He picked out number 5. Said it was right. Well, he didn't say it was on the map, but he said go to this spot, and he drew you formations, angles, and predicted what was going to be on another mountain without ever being at that site.
Right, but the spot that he hit is where I dug number 5 at. And then when he was drawing that map, he told me, "Denny, you're within 500 feet of the gold."
Yes,
I do remember that. So okay, so that's where all this started then. By the time we got back home and told the guys what went on, they couldn't believe the story. That was so fantastic. They says, "You're kidding us." No. The guy, we're planning on going back up and start doing research. And we talked to DCNR because we figured if it's in a coal mine, we'd look around for coal. And then we talked to DCNR to see where the mines are at, and there was nothing in that area. So then we started looking for natural mines, Indian things. We made a couple trips up there, and we really thought we were going to have something. So the one guy actually, he bought the Jeep.
This is when he bought the Jeep.
Yeah, his wife was 100% for him buying it. And there was a group of us of 5, and we weren't allowed to talk to nobody about this. There was if you talk and the word got out about this treasure hunt, you wouldn't get hurt or nothing. You were thrown out of the group, and you got lost all your percentages and everything. I mean, these were good guys, but they were dead set. They were going after something important here. We made a couple of trips up there. Everything that the guy showed us. When I stood at number 5 and I looked off to the left, the mining operation had these giant rock formations piled up, and I'll be damned if there wasn't a daylight going right through. I sit there and I says, "I don't believe this shit." How would he know? I don't even know when those boulders were put there. Could have been a week ago, but here this guy's telling me, "Look over and you'll see this." This guy is the kind of a person that never gets his hands dirty. He's like a very clean, probably has some kind of a thing where they got to stay clean all the time. But
like a germaphobe.
Yeah. He's a very clean guy. So how would he know? So we walked up the road, like he told me, we were within 500 feet, and we're looking for a cave. We walked 500 feet, and if we didn't hit that damn dry riverbed, and I go, "You got to be kidding me." It was right at 500 feet. So the guys were saying, "No," and I said, "Well, there's supposed to be a cave around here. Look for some coal, look for some kind of a closed-up entrance." We couldn't find nothing, and we scoured that whole area, and we gave up.
You gave up?
Yeah. After so many, throughout the summer, we just gave up. It was too much of a project. Everything that he told us to this point was perfect, except we could not find the cave. So we gave up. Yeah.
So what happened with you and those coworkers or those friends? You just grew apart? You guys just gave up hope?
Yep. We gave up hope,
up.
and I don't even remember half their names half the time anymore. 30 years passed, and That's when you came into the scene.
Well, I didn't come in the scene 30 years later. I mean, I came in the scene probably about 10 years later. I was born in 1985. But I don't want to touch on 2004 just yet, so we're going to just stay in this time frame here. I was born in 1985, and that's all I heard growing up as a kid, as a bedtime story was, I know where this gold is at. I know where this gold is at. Blah, 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 blah. That's all I kept hearing. And I'd say, let's go dig it up. Let's go dig it up. And what'd you say? No, it's underwater. There's snakes, there's rattlesnakes, and it's not worth it, and we can't find it. It's gonna take
permits
and money and stuff.
And divers with diving equipment to get in the water, pump the water out. I figured it was going to be a nutcase.
Yeah. So that's why it got postponed for 30 years.
Yeah, and with the rattlesnakes and all that stuff. Yeah.
Like I said, I don't want to touch on 2004 and how Finders Keepers came to start. I'm going to say that for the next episode. But is there anything else that we just talked about that you'd like to clarify or touch base on again? I know people always keep saying that the story never happened. You know, the wagon train didn't exist and there's no evidence. But we got paperwork, and we're going to cover that in the next episode.
Yes.
That's when some more of the fun comes about. So, whatever happened with the Corvette? I'm sure people want to know what happened with the Corvette. Did you ruin it? Did you scratch it?
I sold it and bought real estate.
Well, you didn't do any damage to it, though, with taking in the coal mines, huh?
No,
you just sold it and bought real estate.
It was interesting when I pulled up in that big muddy area, and all these big trucks were going around, and they see a white Corvette pull in. Everybody stopped, and they're looking at us. And I remember the guy saying, "We got to get the hell out of here," because we didn't know if we're allowed up there or not. But
probably thought you were the CEO or something.
I was in mud, and I just spun those tires around slowly, and we just pulled out. And they must have figured, who in their right mind came up here in this place? Because it was all mud up there in the top. Yeah, it was a clay mine. So it was interesting. I can see that stuff in detail. It's like burned into my memory. What the psychic did at W.T. Grant's, I wish I could reenact this and set it up perfectly. But it's something like that you never forget.
Yeah.
It's like when the Kennedy assassination. I remember every minute of that when I saw that on TV. You never forget certain things. This is one of the two things in my life that I'll never forget, yeah.
Whatever happened to W.T. Grant's? I mean, I've never heard of it.
The building is still there, but it's been replaced by other places now. There's just other companies moved in and out. Kmart moved in years later, and then I'm not even sure if it's being used right now, but the plaza's still there. Yep.
But W.T. Grant's as a business is no longer operational?
No. It went out in 1973, 1975.
So like
1975, yeah.
Like a year or two after this was all released and you met the psychic?
3 months after I got into this, I quit W.T. Grant's. They wanted me up for promotions and stuff, and I was into the stock market, and I knew their stock was falling, and they were going bankrupt, so I quit. And the one guy who was with us in this, he says, "Denny, let's you're getting out of this." I said, "I'm quitting W.T. Grant's." He said, "Let's get into real estate." I says, "Okay, let's buy an apartment building." And he says he was looking in the papers, and he couldn't find anything. And here I was looking one day, and it said about a 5-unit in Clearfield up for sale. So I just called the guy up at 7 o'clock at night, and he says, "Yeah, it's still up for sale." I says, "I'll be right over." I drove over here in my Corvette. I'm not even sure what I was buying, and he told me the price, and I says, "I'll take it." And I gave him $500 down, and the next day I paid him in full. And when I came back a couple of days later, I couldn't even find what I bought. I had to drive around the block. I didn't know what I bought. But I ended up selling the Corvette so I could remodel this place that we're living in now. It was a good investment at the time. But my friend got mad at me because he was the janitor at W.T. Grant's, and he wanted in. And I said, "Well, you were looking for stuff. I found it. You didn't, I didn't think he could have the money and stuff, so I bought it, and he didn't. So he was mad at me. We all split up after that.
Something I'd like to just clarify that I just remembered. When you went up into the coal strippings with your Corvette, what time of the year was it?
It was April.
April. What day was it?
It was April the 13th or the 14th.
I meant what was significant about the day.
It was fishing season.
First day of fishing season.
Yep.
And you never missed a day.
Nope. As a kid, I was fishing every day in April the 14th. It depends when it came on a Saturday. When they opened it, it could have been the 15th, the 14th, or the 13th then. But I was standing up there digging those number 5. I was looking off to the left, and I saw people down there fishing. And I'm looking. I said to my friend, I says, I don't believe this. He goes, what? I said, I missed fishing season for the first time ever. And since then, those waters are polluted, and there's no more fish in there since that time frame, which is a shame, definitely.
Okay. I can't think much more to recap on. In the next episode, we're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to start with how Finders Keepers came about in 2004. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below. We will read them. I will like your comment. That way you know I've seen it. We will cover the questions in the beginning of the next episode. Wait a minute. How did we forget the equipment?
Oh, yeah.
How did we forget to cover the equipment?
Bounty
Sorry,
hunter.
we're beginners at this.
Bounty hunter. This was the metal detector I had back then. Obviously, it's pretty beat up and ragged, but that's what I used to go out with on the weekends. Yeah. So things have improved a lot since then.
Mm.
We didn't have a name to the company or nothing. We were just weekend warriors like everybody else. Yep. I don't throw anything away.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Make sure you comment. Make sure you like. Subscribe so you don't miss anything. And we will film in 2 weeks from today.
Yes.
If you have any questions, get them posted below before then so we can cover them. If not, we'll cover them at another time.
Till then.
Bye.
Bye.